All right. I just want to right away give a big shout out to all the uh, future electricians of America that are going out to get their journeyman, get their master. It's really important. Like getting that license is really important. It's going to be the biggest jump you've ever had in your life, and it's going to be really awesome to get your license and everything. And so shout out to everyone who's going out there to get their license tonight.
Sure, and y'all just stick with me and follow through this. You'll know the calculations by the time we're finished. I've noticed, God, we're almost up to 250 people on the YouTube site now. It's becoming very popular. The viewing hours are incredible. I mean, I think I looked at it from what we usually get weekly. It was up like 1,800% or something. I'm like, golly, there's that many people watching this stuff.
Yeah, and just don't forget to like and subscribe. Get your grandma to subscribe, get your uncle to subscribe, get everyone to subscribe, and we will be doing free prep classes for at least the next few more weeks.
It's going to be at least 4 to 6, I would say. Maybe a little bit longer. We'll see how long it takes. But last week we started the calculating conductor ampacities, and we went all the way up to the tap rule. So we're going to start back on that today, going over the exercise problems, and then we'll get into the example problems from that point. All right. So last week when we were looking at this, we were going over talking about the terminals, and I went through and explained how we go about sizing these terminals. Like right here, I've got 60 degree C terminals at the panel, but I have 75 C at the newly added equipment. Well, naturally, you're going to base this ampacity on what? The 60 degree C terminals, okay? And those are the things we like to point out. Now, if I took and put a breaker there that was, say, 60/75, then naturally I could go to the 75 degree C terminals, okay? But this was one that was just put together for everybody to follow. So if I look in step one, the panel terminals were 60 degrees C, the equipment was 75. You look in there, we're telling you we have a calculated load here. We've already done it for you. That's 100 amps, okay? So we'll just follow this down. You got 60 degrees C terminals at the panel and 75 terminals at the equipment. Then I come down and I look at my overcurrent device rating, go over and look at table 240.6A for standard size. The next size up above that is going to be, well, it'll be the exact same size. It'll be 100 amp. And then when I'm looking at sizing the conductor here, I'm going to go over and I'm going to base it on which column, the 60 degree C column. And when I go over and pick that up in table 310.16, the number one's good for 110 amps. So that THHN copper conductor is 110 amps, and that's based on which terminals? 60 degrees C. Now,
and just to give you a little bonus thing, James, like just for a lot of people out there to know, a lot of people think there's breaker terminals that are 60 degrees C. Pretty much the standard across the board when it comes to breakers, equipment, pretty much everything across the board is going to be 75 degrees C or larger.
Sure it is.
So the only time you're going to use that 60 degrees C for 110 14C1 is if the terminals are unknown. So James is giving you an example where the terminals are known, and that's where you get those values from.
Well, this is the type of thing they could ask you on the test.
Yeah, I agree, but you would default to 110 14C1 if the terminals are unknown.
C1A. That would be
C1A.
The 6 degree, and C1B would be 75 degrees C. Okay?
Right.
Now, same thing here. This is very simple. The equipment and the panel are 75 degrees C. I've got a 208 amp non-continuous load. What's the next size overcurrent device above that 218? Go over and look at table 240.6A for your standard ampere ratings. That'd be a 225. Now I need to find a wire ampacity above that. Okay, so I would take, in this case, I'm in the 75 degrees C column, and I come down and I pick up 230 amps is the next size above it. Come across, that's going to tell you it's a 4-aught conductor. Now, I could actually take, I have two options for that. I could take and protect the load, which would be a 225 amp overcurrent device, or I could actually protect the conductor, which would be a 250 amp overcurrent device. Okay?
Right.
But they're going to have you do minimum, so it's going to be a 225. Okay? But I just like to point them things out because earlier we'd done one and I was talking about if I calculated load where the wire size didn't match up with the overcurrent device, and I was given examples. There's another good example of that. Now, this is where we're going to get in. We start looking at adjustment and correction factors. We did this last week, and I said when you go over and look at table 310.16, look at the top of it. It'll tell you that table is good for 3 current carrying conductors or less, and it's good for temperatures up to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Once you're over that, then you got to start looking at table 310.15B1 and table 310.15C1. So in this case, I brought this up last week. When am I going to be able to use the 90 degree C column? That's in table 310.16. And I stated if you go over and look at 110.14C, you pick up the last sentence that's in that paragraph there. It's going to talk about adjustment or correction factors. If you're applying those, you're permitted to use the highest rated terminal rating, okay?
Right.
Or the highest rated insulation rating, which would be 90 degrees C for the terminal. So,
dude, we had one today, which I think you'll be interested in. Mr. Ryan Jackson said that you size it off the 60 degree insulation rating of, like, so if you're on a NM cable, he said it's 60 degree insulation rating, and I don't think that's correct.
No, that's not. What he's talking about is once you do the 90 degree C and you derate off of that, then you're looking to make sure that you have enough amperage to protect that load in the 60 degree C column. And
True.
if he didn't explain it that way, that's once again, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
True. And I just wanted to give you a shout out, James. We had one come through on a Facebook group that couldn't comment on here. Mm-hmm. I don't know what happened. I'm just letting you guys know you have to visit the StreamYard site to
go to YouTube. You should be able to do it. That's where we tell everybody.
Yeah, and make sure and subscribe and smash the likes. But he said he really loves your book. He said he loves the Stallcup book. So there's just big shout out. Yeah. So.
I'll back it up.
It didn't come through on the thing, but okay. I looked at it.
I appreciate it. All right, so now if you go over and you look at table 310.16 for this illustration, we got 4 current carrying conductors, and we're using number 12 AWG, American wire gauge, of course, that's what it means, THHN. Now, I want to point this out one more time for anybody that's going back, following all this, trying to get everything in their mind again. But remember, go look at table 310.4, and in this case, you're looking at PRIN 1 table. And when you go over and pick that up, it's going to tell you the THHN is good for what? 90 degrees C. Now, if this was THWN, you could only take and use the 75 degrees C column. Okay? That's what you got to look at, is the type of conductor that is in there in order to know which one of the columns you can use. Okay? Now, if I look at this at THHN, and I'm in the 90 degree C column for number 12 per table 310.16, it's going to tell me it's good for 30 amps. And then if I'm looking at the adjustment factor, I'm going to go over and I'm going to look at table 310.15B1, and you go over and it'll tell you four more current carrying conductors, you're going to have, it'll say 4 to 7, you're going to have an 80% derating factor. So you take the 30 amps times 80%, and that'll give you 24 amps. That's what each conductor is limited to. Okay.
Yeah, and what's a
And
good
I was
thing
just
to
thinking,
know?
I just stated table 310.15B1. I meant C1. I don't know why I said that.
Right.
I was for some reason my mind was on a correction factor, not an adjustment. Okay.
Yeah, so just so everyone knows that typically what we use as a rule of thumb is to not do not exceed 8 current carrying conductors. So that's basically like 4 circuits if you're like on number 12s. And so yeah, you have 8 current carrying conductors and a ground. So that's basically 9 wires in any size pipe, and that's just a good rule of thumb, And that's based on the derating factor for 20 amps. Now, if you start doing different kinds of equipment and stuff, you're gonna have to do different calculations. But I'm just saying what we use as from a foreman level out in the field. That's what we do.
Sure. I know what you're talking about.
Yep.
All right. Now, same thing here. It's THHN. I'm still at table 310.16. I pick up a number 8 in the 90-degree C column. It tells me it's good for 55 amps. Then I look at table 310.15B1, pick up in the far right-hand column. I come down, find where I'm in the range for 125 degrees Fahrenheit, come across, pick up the 90-degree C column. It's going to tell you have a derating factor of 76%. So it's pretty basic. 55 amps times 76% gives me 41.8 amps for each conductor. Pretty simple. Now you're doing both of them. Exactly the same thing. I've got number 12, it's THHN, so we already did that portion. It's good for 30 amps. You had 8 current carrying conductors. That got me just right over the 7, so that got me over the 6 from 4 to 6, so it's going to be a 70% derating factor. For 100 degrees Fahrenheit in table 310.15B1, you got a 91% derating factor. Just multiply all that together, and it's going to limit each conductor to 19.11 amps. So hopefully everybody's followed that, and everything turned out exactly the way we said it would. Now, this is the one where we started talking about it having a 50% diversity factor inside. So basically what that means, in this case, I've got 28 conductors. Okay. If I've got 28 conductors, that's a 50% diversity. That means 14 of them will be what? Current carrying. Okay.
Right.
This was my 50% diversity, and you'll see the note there. We tell you all that. So all you're going to do is the same calculation applies. You just got to go and look at table B.211, and you're going to see for 28 conductors, it's going to tell you to put a 60% derating factor on that. Nothing changed. I've got 30 amps still for the number 12 conductor. I just put a 60% derating factor. That gave me 18 amps for each conductor because I have a diversity of 50% here. Okay, now let's look at my diversity here. This is a different type of diversity, and you're counting. So in other words, look at this. I have 28 conductors in the raceway, but 20 of them are current carrying. Where the last one I did, I actually had a 50% diversity because only 14 were current carrying. So you'll use this formula right here to get your percentage, but you're still going to put the 60% on it for like we did the 28 conductors. So you'll have this calculation at 0.5. That's going to be a constant. Then you got time in. Time in is the number. So I've got 28 conductors, and E is the number that are current carrying. I'm going to divide that into that 28, and that's 20 conductors. That's going to give me 84%. So all I'm going to do is the same calculation that I just did for the 50% diversity. The only thing I'm doing different is adding 84% to it. Okay?
Dude, I'll tell you what, honestly, I'll be honest. I've been doing this trade for 27 years. I've never seen a diversity calculation. Honest,
well,
total
it's
honest.
The Stallcup, baby. What do you expect?
I'm telling you, honestly, I've never seen this. Like, I'm not saying that it could be on a test, but the whole thing is you have to understand that people who write these exams study from the Stallcups,
They
so
do.
you
I
gotta watch
always
that.
tell everybody, you go look at other publications and see if they show you how to do this. So go see if they have a publication that shows you how to take and say you got a transformer that's in a high altitude. How do you calculate that transformer? Because you're going to have a diversity on that. Who shows you? We show you that. I could just go on and on. Who has a publication that takes a motor that has no markings at all and shows you how to ohm each one of the leads and track it out in order to mark your motor from scratch?
Dude, we actually just to let everyone know, we have a sweet illustration. It was actually designed by me. Just so you know, I don't want James to take no credit on this one. The high voltage live peckerhead motor illustration. I told James how to draw that one.
Yeah,
That
he
was
told me he
awesome.
wanted. And what was funny, I did it in an hour as we were just
Yeah,
talking on the phone. I just
yeah.
drew
We're
it off.
sitting there going. I was like,
But
this is a wedge motor.
this is the type of stuff you see in the publication. But you listen to Jeremy and all them. Our publications are a disgrace to the industry and blah blah blah. I mean, it's ridiculous some of the things they say.
Yeah, right
Yeah.
on.
Now, if you look at this, this is a service. Now, remember what I told you last week. It doesn't matter if I'm doing a service, a feeder, or branch circuit. You always take the continuous loads at what? 125%. Non-continuous at what? 100%.
100%.
The only thing you're going to look at that's different, if I'm doing it for services, I'm in 230.42A1. Once I get over to feeders, I'm at 215.2A1 and 215.3. If I go to branch circuits, I'm in 210.19A1A and B, and also 210.20A. Okay? So
Yeah.
let's look at it. I've got 74 amps of continuous load. Take it at 125%, gives me 92.5 amps. I got 62 amps of non-continuous load. Naturally, that's 62 amps at 100%. Add it together gives me 154.5. Now, actually, a 1-aught is good for 150 amps, but we got to be above the 154.5 amps. And actually, a lot of times what I would tell people to do, we put it in 0.5, but more than likely, I would just round this up to 155 amps. And the next conductor size above that for 75 degrees C column would be a 2-aught conductor, which is good for 175 amps. Pretty
Right.
simple. Okay.
Hey, just letting you know, this is actually John Reitz. Thanks for joining, John Reitz.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
I just see it over on the Facebook side. I try to keep track of who joins in on the Facebook side.
Yeah, he takes care of that when I deal with all this other. Okay.
Yeah, John's a good guy.
Now, feeder conductors. Now, looky there. 40 amps of continuous load, 150 amps of non-continuous load. If it's continuous, I take it at what? 125. So 40 amps times 125 is 50 amps. Had 150 amps of non-continuous, take it at 100%, gives me 150 amps. That's 200 amps. I look at table 310.16, 75 degrees C column. You need a 3-aught conductor, which is good for 200 amps. Now, did my calculation change at all?
Nope.
No, didn't change one bit. Looky here, I'm going to do a branch circuit next. Looky there. I've got 10 amps of continuous, 27 amps of non-continuous. So 10 amps times 125% is 12.5. Add the 27 to it, 39.5 amps. The next size above that in the 75 degrees C columns is number 8, which is good for 50 amps.
Yeah.
Now, was that hard?
No.
No, it was simple. And I didn't change that calculation one bit.
You actually got one like just because of that calculation. I just seen it coming.
I should get more than that.
All right.
I don't care. Yeah. Now, look at this.
You'll get more.
This is 182 amps of continuous load. Okay? Now, if it's continuous, what do I take it at? 125%. Yep. So that gives me 227.5 amps at 75 degrees C terminals. If I go over in step 3, I go look at table 310.16, the next size above that in the 75 degrees C column, which is a 4-aught, which is good for 230 amps. And in this case, I'm just going to go ahead. I could take and protect the load or the conductor. In this case, I'm looking at 227.5 amps. The next size overcurrent device above that anyway is going to be what? 250 amp.
Oh yeah.
See what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
you look,
I don't have the standard sizes like right
yeah,
on speed dial, you know.
but if you look, this is 240.4B. Now, what is one of the things I said about 240.4B? I said that's for devices rated 800 amps or less. Once I'm above
Well,
800 amps, then I'm in 240.4C. Now, one of the things I brought up, and we just showed a good example of this earlier, but if I did a calculation and I came up, say, 58 amps, and I go look at table 240.6A, what's the next size overcurrent device above that? A 60 amp.
60. Yeah.
But if I look at table 310.16 and I pick up the wire size, the next size above that 58 amps is 65 amps, which is a number 6 conductor. Well, I can either protect the load or that conductor because it didn't match up with the overcurrent device. So what's the next size above that 65 amps? That's a 70 amp. So I could use
Okay.
a 60 or 70 amp. That's how you're going to apply 240.4B. But now when I
Sure.
get to 240.4C, I'm over 800 amps. You cannot exceed, okay? And I'm going to show you that calculation here. It's very simple. So here I'm gonna parallel
So
four.
I just want to just so everyone understands. So basically, you're saying you could protect the load or the conductor, and
Exactly.
if you're protecting the conductor, you could protect the conductor over that ampacity rating.
Sure you can. Matter of
But if you're
fact,
protecting the load, then it has to be under.
that's right. And if you go look at uh, uh, 240.4B, it actually has in parentheses that you can protect the conductor. Okay. And that's why I tell everybody to go read this stuff. I can sit here and just tell you all day long, but I like to give things that you understand where I'm coming from and things I want you to pay attention to and look at so you know exactly how to apply that section. Now, here's 240.4C, and on each phase here, I have 758 amps of continuous load. So if it's continuous, naturally I take it 125%. Now watch this. That gives me 947.5 amps. Okay. Now I need, and I'm saying here, we're going to parallel this 4 times. So I'm going to have to go find something that is above that 947.5 amps. And if you did this calculation, you should have come up with this. If you went and picked up your 250 kc mill, which is in the 250 kc mill mark, that's going to give you 255 amps. If I take the 255 amps times 4, that's going to give me 1,020. Now, this is interesting because if you go over and you look at 240.4C, it says the conductors shall be equal to or exceed that calculated ampacity. So if they have to exceed that, that means once you have your amperage value, which is in this case 1,020 amps, you can exceed that. So that means you're going to drop down to the next standard size, which in this case is 1,000 amp overcurrent device. So if you notice, and there's going to be some good rules of thumb when we get into size and overcurrent protection devices in chapter or the next phase of this. But, and I'll give you some good rules of thumbs to play by. But right now, we're taking in Article 240 and we're explaining how you apply 240.4B and how you apply 240.4C. So just remember it like this. 240.4B is for uh, uh, overcurrent protection devices that are 800 amps or less.
Right.
240.4C is over 800 amps. Okay.
Right.
And the thing you want to remember in 240.4C, the conductors have to exceed, or they have to be the same size or exceed the ampacity, exceed the calculated ampacity. So that means you're going to drop down. Okay.
And I just want to add something. If you use an adjustable circuit breaker and you size your equipment ground for 600 amps and then you have to turn it up to 800 amps, you're gonna need to pull a new equipment ground because there's different things on the table you have to look at. So
That is
hopefully
true.
you don't. Hopefully you don't have to call a certain code person to ask them that question to see if you're an idiot or not.
Sure. Now, here's a good example right here. You know, I was on NEC Live, and I made this statement when we got into taps, and even Derek, he goes, I've never heard that before. And I said, well, I'm
Right.
going to show you it's true. But I'm going to tell everybody this is what you want to remember about calculating taps.
Dude,
Taps,
Derek was impressed with you on that, like, because I was like, man, you should have James on. And he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, James Stallcup, he's really good. And then he had you on, and then he's like, wow, he couldn't even keep up with you on the
oh,
NEC
no.
link. On the.
Yeah, he goes, James, slow down, man. He goes, you're too quick.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
that's how
funny.
I say. I've been doing this a long time. It's like I told Jeremy, come on, we'll do calculations, grounding, bonding. I said, let's don't even use a code book, Jeremy. Let's see who really knows. He's
Yeah.
chickening out now. But
Uh,
the thing here is, remember this about taps. If the tap is 10 foot or less, you divide by 10. All
yep.
other taps above 10 foot, you take at a third. The only difference you're going to have is if I'm coming and I'm doing a tap and I have a transformer within that tap, then you have to get on the secondary side the ratio of the transformer. But the
Right.
interesting thing about this is all other taps over 10 foot, you take at a third. And even when that transformer is in that tap, the primary's taken at a third and the secondary's taken at a third. The only difference is you got the ratio of the transformer on the secondary side. Okay?
Right.
So let's take a look. So I'm going to size the THW and copper conductors, and I've got a 10-foot tap that is protected upstream by a 400 amp overcurrent device. I said 10 foot or less, I divide by what? 10. That's going to
Yeah.
give me 40 amps. I go to table 310.16. The next size in the 75-degree C column above that's a number 8. And then I'm going to verify the size of that overcurrent device. When you go look at 240.21B14, it says it's 1,000% of the size there. Okay. So basically, I got 400. That's 40 amps times the 1,000% is going to give you 400 amps. Okay.
Right.
So that's how easy a tap is. When I get over here to work on this on the next thing, you're going to see we have a 600 amp upstream. Same thing as the last one. I divide by what? 10. Simple.
Yep.
Okay. Now I go to a 25-foot tap. I said, all taps that are more than 10 foot, what do I take it at? A third. Okay.
Yep.
So I take a third of a 400 amp overcurrent device. That gives me 133.3 amps. Go look in the 75-degree C column in table 310.16. The next size above that's a 1-aught conductor, which is good for 150 amps. That's pretty
So
simple.
so basically, with that calculation, so you're saying that that is anything from like 11 foot to like infinity foot, or is that
Anything, it doesn't matter how
11
long
foot?
it is. I can go up to 100 foot. You're still going to take it at a third. There's just other rules
Okay,
that you follow. And I'm going to prove
okay.
that. Okay.
But if it's outdoor, you don't have to do any of this, right?
Yeah, it's different. And I'm
Okay,
going to get into uh, where it's not a tap and we're doing secondary conductors. Matter of fact,
gotcha.
there used to be a problem. Being in the trade as long as I have, people used to say, oh, just tap the secondary side of that transformer. That didn't make it a tap. Those were
Right,
actually transformer secondary conductors. They wasn't tap conductors. But the
gotcha.
reason
Okay,
it got to be so, what ended up happening because people were using that terminology, they had to come in and rewrite 240.21, and that's where you got now 240.21B and C. B deals with taps, and C deals with transformer secondary conductors now. Okay.
okay. Kind of like how there's a certain code person who put out a thing that said you have to go off the sizes for 250, 66, A, B, and C. So. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't know who said that first. I think it was you, maybe.
Yeah, it was. But when people get over this, this is just like the 10-foot tap. The only difference is we did a 25-foot tap. Same type of
Right.
overcurrent protection device. Instead, you're just taking it at a third. Okay. So nobody should have a problem sizing that. Now, here's one that I'm looking at where I have a transformer within the tap. Okay. And in this case, we're telling you, we want you to size the conductors, and we're telling you for the primary and secondary, where you have a 25-foot tap. And we also put a little note on here so you know what we're doing here. You have a 250 amp overcurrent protection device that's used for the 408 volt primary. Okay. This way you can size this. We give you all the information you need
Oh,
upstream to be able to do
you
it.
mean you mean 480 volt? I thought.
Yeah,
Okay.
480. That's what I
Oh
said,
yeah.
didn't I? Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
I thought you said 408.
No, 480.
I heard you wrong. Sorry.
So if I look at step one, I do the primary. What do I take it at? A third. Okay.
Yep.
Gives you 83.3 amps. Go to table 310.16, pick up the 75-degree C column. It's going to tell you need a number 4, which is good for 85 amps. Now I'm going to do the secondary. All you're going to do here is take the 480 volt, divide the 208 volt in it, and then you take the upstream overcurrent device, which is 250 amps, at what? A third. Now, that's interesting. Why did I divide the 208 volts into the 480 volts? Because it tells me I have to get the ratio. That's right.
Yep.
But I'm still doing the same calculation. The only difference is I'm just getting the ratio, which is 192 amps. I go look at table 310.16 in the 75-degree C column. The next size above that's 200 amps, which is a 3-aught conductor. Pretty simple. Okay. Yeah. And what I like to point out, if you notice, once I got over 10 foot, everything was taken at a third, isn't it? Okay. And I also point something else out here. The only variance I had here was a transformer, and I had to get the ratio on the secondary. Okay. Right. And I keep repeating that because I want people to remember when you go take a test, you should remember this stuff. And then right here, what do we got? We got a 408 volt primary, 208 volt secondary. It's a 25-foot tap. And you've got all your information here with a 300 amp overcurrent device. So basically, you know the primary is taken at a third for that 300 amp. The secondary, I need the ratio plus a third of what? The overcurrent protection device, which is 300 amps, and that'll give you your amperage. All right? Right. Now look at this. This is a 100-foot tap. I said, even you go up to 100 foot, what do I take it at? A third. Yeah. So I've got a 350 amp overcurrent device upstream. Take it at a third. That gives me 116.7 amps. You know, I can sit here and go on all day. The thing I want people to pay real close attention to, 10 foot or less, divide by 10. Everything else you take at a third. Don't care if it goes up to 100 foot. They may do a 100-foot tap thinking they'll trick you. Don't get tricked and falling into that. Pay attention to the basic rules that I'm giving you and tips to remember when you go in and you're going to take a test. So this in here, you took at a third, and you need a number 1 copper conductor. Come over here. Here's your 100-foot conductor. Now, this is a good example. See all these extra rules we give you in here? Stuff that you might see on the test. Where you're going up vertical, you need at least 30 foot. Where you're going horizontal, you need at least what? 25 foot. You see all that? Those are rules that are in there. But still, when I'm sizing the tap upstream, that 400 amps is taken at what? A third. Okay.
Yeah, and one thing to let everyone know if they're getting ready to take that test, if it doesn't say it word for word, like if you're not following this word, like I really appreciate this, James, because what you're doing is perfect. You know, you're making it say it word for word. Like if you deviate from any of this stuff that James has on the screen right now, you're gonna get it wrong because it has to be word for word. It has to line up. You can actually reverse calculate stuff. like what I like to do, I always like to cross-reference stuff. And I don't care if it's like on my journeyman exam. I don't care if it's in real life. I like to cross-reference. I like to be like, hey, is this right? Is this wrong? Is this right? Is this wrong? You know? And I like to cross-reference stuff. I'm like, so if this is right, then this is way wrong. So that's a Chinese reporter. It's a little joke that I do. But I'm like, hey, this is a Chinese reporter. And then somebody's like, what? Did you say something about a Chinese reporter? I was like, oh yeah, it's way wrong, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, stuff like that. So you have to just make sure that you avoid that when, like, you're on the test. There's stuff that they're going to throw at you that's meant to be a trick. And you have to know that that's a Chinese reporter. It's way wrong, you
Sure.
know?
And that's why
And you
we
just
go
have to
through it
be,
this way,
right. Yeah.
is to make people
So,
think. You know, like here, I'm dropping into 240.21C. Okay,
mm-hmm.
this is transformer secondary conductors, and all you're doing is calculating the transformer. And we did this the other day. You remember when we first started this, and I was showing where you had a transformer, and we were doing basic calculations, and I said, just get the kVA of the transformer, divide it by the voltage. That's your amperage. Okay,
Okay.
same thing here. We're doing
Okay.
the overcurrent protection devices based on the output of the transformer. Well, if I have a 300 kVA transformer, I want to put it in VA, so I'll multiply it by 1,000. Then you got 208 volts times 1.732. That'll be 360 volts there. You divide that in to there, that's going to give you 833 amps. Now, this is interesting. Why didn't I go up to a 900 amp overcurrent device? Well,
Is
that's
that a
interesting.
standard size? Is that
Well,
in 240.6?
240.21B, I'm sorry, 240.4B, that's for devices up to what? 800 amps. But once I
Oh.
look at 240.4C, the conductors have to be equal to or greater than the output. So my
Oh.
output is 833 amps. That means I'm going to drop down. See what I'm
Okay.
saying? Now, I could take and say I need an 800 amp overcurrent device there, but yet if I actually go do the calculation and we put this down the solution, if I had four 4-aught conductors, that's 230 amps per conductor. That's going to give me 920 amps. I could actually go to a 900 amp.
But that's a custom size.
Right. It's not a standard size per table 240.6A, but you
True.
can purchase them. Okay.
All right.
And then here's
Well,
another one. We've got a 70 kVA transformer, and then you're going to multiply that by 1,000 to get the VA. And what's my voltage that are there? Well, you got 480 volt primary, you got a 208 volt secondary. We can tell you the continuous load there. Just do a quick calc to show you the load will be 172.5 amps. And in other words, once you do this calculation, we're going to prove that you're large enough.
right.
Okay. Now, the next one, same thing, C3. If you notice, I've got a 300 kVA transformer. Once again, that secondary is what? 208 volt. Well, looky
Yeah.
there. I did the exact same calculation, and looky there. I came up where I could take and put an 800 amp overcurrent device there. Okay?
Right.
Very.
Nice.
All of this is very, very simple. You
Yeah,
just
and a
need.
lot of people don't realize when they see 833 amps in their calculation, they don't realize that you can drop down to the next standard size. Like you don't have to go up to 850, even though that could be a standard size.
Sure. And I think everybody that's watching this, you'll see that I set all of that up before I got to this. And
Yeah,
people
and
may have
I
looked at it and thought, why the hell is he making us do these terminations and all that? Well, now you're starting to understand because you're getting into the meat of it. And if you don't get that portion right, you damn sure not going to understand the next portion of it.
well, and what everyone needs to realize right now is there's a lot of deflection from all the failed Willy quizzes. So you know what I mean? Like you have to
Mm-hmm.
understand that James, he just knows it's an easy test coming, but he knows that Daniel might just show up and win the quiz tonight. So
His ass is mine
dude,
tonight.
I don't give Daniel the answers. Just letting you know, I don't give anybody the answers. There could be some people in the chat that have the
I'm
answers.
looking forward to everybody joining. All right,
All
now
right.
if you notice, this is once again I've got a 25-foot tap. I'm doing the same calculation when I get to transformer secondary conductors. Is what I'm trying to point out. When I come
Right.
over here and I look at C4, I'm doing exactly the same thing here. Okay, I've just got higher voltages. This is a 600 kVA customer owned transformer, and I got a 408 volt secondary. You add that time 1.732, that'll give you 831 volts. You divide it in there, it gives you 722 amp output. Well, per 240.4B, 800 amps or less, well, what's the next size above that? 800 amps. See that? That's simple. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. I'm doing transformer secondary conductors, but the calculation isn't hard. All you need to know
Yeah.
is the kVA of the transformer, know what the voltage is on the secondary side, and then know if I'm not over 800 amps, I can go up. Once I'm over 800 amps, I have to drop down. It's that simple.
So just so everyone knows, like the only way that the NEC applies is if that's a customer owned. If that's a utility owned, then the NEC doesn't apply. So that's a really good distinction there, James, because people could have that on their test.
Sure, they could.
Just kind of like I do on my Willy quiz, where I say, "Hey, that's not even part of this question." You know what I mean? Like it's not trick. It's just getting you to think.
Usually the ones that own their own customer
Oh,
own.
like we should get a Jaws tune. Dun 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 dun
Daniel
dun
J's
dun.
in the house. I love it. All right, let's finish this because we're almost an hour and a half already. Okay, now this is one for a busway. Can a 200 amp busway be tapped from a 600 amp busway? Now I said all other taps you take at what? A third? Oh, looky there.
Yeah.
I take it a third. That's 200 amp. Yes, it can be tapped from it. That's not hard. Okay, you come over here. I've got it. Actually, I think they did a pretty awesome job with this new busway drawing. But you got 150 amp busway. A third of that's 50 amps. I can already tell you the answer is yes on that illustration. Now, let's look at this. Here's a motor circuit tap. Now, looky there. It's 10 foot. If it's 10 foot, what do I divide it by?
10%.
Divided by 10. See, I never changed anything. 10 foot or less, divide by. See, we give you a lot of different things in here. We may say boom, 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 boom. Then we throw a little sidetrack in there. Here's one for a motor, 10 foot or less. How do you do it? Same thing like we did earlier. You got 600 amps upstream, divide by 10 gives you 60 amps. I go over, look at table 310.16, the size of conductors. The next size above that, 65 amps, which is the number 6 conductor. And 65 amps is greater than the 60 amp that's calculated. There's how you do your conductors. That wasn't hard. See there?
No, wasn't.
And here it is. We're showing you where a tap's coming down. I'm showing you the disconnect. I'm showing you the controller and going to the motor. That's a pretty sweet looking illustration.
Done.
I'm ready. You got now this one here. Let's look. It's 800 amps and it's a 10 foot tap. So I'm going to divide by 10, which is going to give me what? 80 amps, and I work it from there. Okay.
Nice.
Now here's one where I have a generator that has an output. So I need to get the full amperage for the output of that generator, and I need to know I've got 250 kVA transformer. Take that at 1,000 to get it in VA form. I've got 482.77 volt. I want to get it on the primary there. So I'll take the 480 volt times 1.732, and that's going to give me 300.8 amps. Now, when you go look at 445.13, it says when you're doing the conductors for sizing the generator, you're going to take it at 115%. Okay?
Right.
And that's going to give you 345.9 amps. I go look at table 310.16. The next size above that's a 500 kc mill. That's simple. Okay? And a lot of people think this is hard, but if you look, I'm dealing with transformers and generators. What did I have to do? I needed to know the kVA of the transformer generator, then the voltage, divided into it to get my amperage. That's it. in order to
Yeah.
size my conductors.
And
Very
you guys
expensive.
are free. You guys are free to like print those out and fill them out. Like that's what's so cool about illustrations. You have like print them out, fill them out.
Oh yeah,
Like solve the problems. Like I like how you do that, bro.
it took years and years and years of putting those illustrations together. It because there's so much you have to do and the drawings and you got to get stuff to fit. I mean, it was a chore, but that's okay.
So
We got
what
enough.
I want to do is I want to challenge anyone to post up all those illustrations and show all the mistakes in them because there's supposedly a bunch of mistakes. I want to challenge anybody to post them up.
Oh, that's from Charles Buckhart and all them. They just mouth off, you know. It reminds me we went to IEC and they had their school over there, and you had this girl, Melinda or something. I don't remember her name, but she come in. You know, they were pushing some other publisher. You know, probably getting kickbacks, but she coming there telling me we had all these mistakes coming there about 4 or 5 people, and we had kegs in there and everything. Everybody's in there drinking, and I said, well, where are the mistakes at? And she goes, well, I don't know. And I said, no. I said, what the problem is? I said, you're going to come in here and tell me I have mistakes, but yet you're not going to show me. I said, the reason you don't want to show me is because I'm going to show you don't know what you're talking about. I said, because you're really
Yeah.
not that good of an instructor, and you
Well,
actually
yeah.
need to be taught by an instructor that knows what talking. She goes, I can't believe you said that to me. And I said, well, I can't believe you coming here accusing me our book's having all of these mistakes, but yet you can't show me one.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I said, why don't you just get the hell out of our room? I said, everybody in here is drinking, having hors d'oeuvres, having a good time. And I said, we have some woman come in here and start giving us the third degree with her little posse here. I said, won't y'all go over to somebody else's rooms? Get out of our room. I told them to get out.
Yeah,
But
so the thing is that everyone needs to understand is that like this is all like without merit. Like they're like, oh, we're removing Stallcup books from our program. Well, we don't have any proof anywhere that any Stallcup books have ever been removed from any program because all the experts study off Stallcup, you know.
mhm.
So I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, I think it's fine. You know what I mean? Like whatever. Like the Stall Cut books are being removed. Well, the Stall Cut books had never been for like the I guess you would say like the apprentices, whatever.